Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome to my video for the November Leaves Challenge. I'm using the Gourd Goodness set by Stampin' Up! And then I have quite a few coloring mediums. I've got a few distress markers. I have 3 Gonzai Tombi colors and also Stampin' Up! Crushed Curry ink pad. I'm going to start with an A2 size piece of Neenah cardstock, and I've mounted my leaf stamp to an acrylic block that's the same size as the leaf, and you'll see why in a second. So I'm going to ink up my stamp with the crushed curry, and this is a very juicy ink pad, and I'm going to stamp off, and then I'm going to roll it around the edges. This is the rock and roll technique, and so I'll get a darker edge on this leaf. So I'm going to stamp this one in the middle of my cardstock, and it doesn't look very pretty, but once I add the other colors, it's going to look really good. And this sort of adds sort of a dried edge to the leaf to make it a little more realistic. And Stampin' Up! Inks, whenever you stamp off with them, you get a completely different color. So I have a really nice two-toned colored leaf now. Now you can see why I used a block as small as I could so that I could really hit those edges of the stamp, because if my block was too big, it'd be hard to ink up those edges. All right, so I stamped this to the right here, and the next one will be to the left. So I have 3 straight across. This is a 2-step stamp. For my second part, I'm going to be using my Stampin' I usually stamp my image in black ink so it's really clear when I'm trying to position it. So I'm going to put that handle in the upper left-hand corner and use the corner to push down and up to stamp my plastic sheet. Now I'm going to get my second step ready, and what I'm going to do here is color it directly with some distress markers. And I'm going to be really random about it, and it's going to be kind of hard to see, but it really doesn't matter because if I miss a spot, it's no big deal because I have that crushed curry already stamped. But it's pretty, I mean, you could definitely see it. Unless your stamp is really stained, you shouldn't have any problem. And if you go over some of the colors that you already hit, it's no big deal. It doesn't contaminate your marker. You just draw on a piece of scratch paper and it'll come off. The colors I'm using here are Mowed Lawn, Barn Door, and Carved Pumpkin. I'm going to spritz this with some water in a minute, but before I do that, I want to position my Stampin' You can see how easy it is to see through this sheet rather than trying to look through a photopolymer stamp. Now I can spritz my stamp with some water to reactivate those colors, and then just use that handle to stamp down. You can see how perfectly lined up it is. Now I'm going to clean it in between each one just to start fresh, and now I'm going to recolor this with the same colors. Notice that I have part of the stem hanging off the block. It's because I'm not sure why the stem is so long, so I'm just not going to color it so that it lines up with the other one. All right, same process here. Line up my Stampin' and then now I can mist this with some water. The more water you use, the more the colors will blend together, and you won't see as much of the detail of the image with more water. So I kind of varied the amount of water that I used. Next, I'm going to add some splatters with these 3 colors. They're Gonzai Tombi palettes, and I'll have the numbers on my blog, but I tried to match them up with the distress markers. And so notice that I cleaned off the barrel of my brush to make sure I didn't get any water droplets onto my cardstock. So I'm going to tap it from above, and I'm getting some pretty good splatters here. The thicker the paint, the smaller the splatters will be. So here I'm going to do red now. I'm just going to clean off my brush, and I dropped quite a bit of water here, and I'm using my craft mat to sort of make it a little thinner, like not quite so much color on my brush. You could also wait just a few seconds, and the water starts to absorb into the paint, and the paint will be thicker. So if you're a little nervous about dropping it, I would use a drier brush, so not as much water. So here are my splatters. I like the way that turned out. The Autumn Acorn set by Ellen Hudson is the only one that I had that said Happy Thanksgiving. So I'm going to put these 2 words on the block at the same time, stamp them onto some black cardstock with Versamark ink, and then I'm going to sprinkle it with some white embossing powder and then heat it to set it. And I wanted to show you, I have this piece of crumb cake cardstock, and I accidentally scored it at 5 3/4 instead of 5 1/2. So to fix this, I flipped it over so the hump was kind of facing upward. And now I'm just sort of flattening it out with my bone folder, and it really did a great job of kind of returning the cardstock to its original form. It's not perfect, But I do this a lot actually, so I was kind of happy to find this trick. And so now I'm going to score it in the correct spot, and then I'll fold it over, and you'll still be able to see that little mess up that I have, but I'm going to make sure that it's on the back of the card so nobody's even going to notice it. Anyway, just a little handy tip there. So I'm going to measure my sentiment, like where I need to cut it off on the right, and then I'll measure my banner on the left, so a circle kind of in the middle, and then the edge of the banner. So I'm going to trim off this by hand, and then I'll trim off the edge of the banner that I marked, and then that little middle dot, I'm going to cut the center of the edge to that dot, and then I'll cut from each corner to that same dot. It's just a really simple, quick and easy way to get a banner. I cut my leaf panel to 3.5 inches high, and I'm going to mat it onto a piece of black cardstock. So I'm eyeballing this. I want about 1/8 of an inch at the top, and then I'm going to mark 1/8 of an inch at the bottom and just trim it with my scissor. I'll put some tape runner on the back of my leaves and adhere it to this black cardstock. And then I decided to add a little more detail. So I took my Gathered Twigs distress marker, I'm using the fine tip, and I'm just kind of going over this leaf. And honestly, I can't really see the lines in this particular leaf because I spritzed it with more water, so the colors kind of ran together and I lost some of the detail. So I'm just making it up where I don't see it. So I'm just gonna kind of flick upward and draw some leaf veins just kind of coming outward. I'm not going to go all the way to the edge. I'm not going to make too many. I just want there to be a little bit more dimension. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit here. You can see this one is much easier to see because I didn't put as much water on my stamp. And finally, this last one, I think it definitely made these leaves look a little more realistic. Okay, so I added some Stampin' Up! Dimensionals to my sentiment. I'm just going to put it right there below the leaves, and then I'll add some tape runner to the back of my black panel and add it to the crumb cake card base. And that is the card for today. It's actually a pretty quick and easy card to make. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.